So perhaps as we wait for a few more folks to join in, just to give everybody a quick context as well, right, to tonight's session. So I suppose actually many of you here will be the parents of primary one, primary two students. And what happens is you all may be aware that actually within the Singapore system now, right, there's going to be some changes to the GEP program. So GEP, as we know it during our time and during the parents' time yourself, actually we know it as the gifted education program. But actually what happens is that since this year there will be some significant changes, and actually there will be quite a number of implications for people who wish to enter into such a program. And in fact, as we go forward, we'll look at it more in terms of a high ability learner program. So today, this morning, or rather this evening, we'll be looking really in terms of the implications, right? So what are the key changes? What are really the implications for your child? Right, and what does it mean for us actually, right? So now that there's no more so-called GEP and it has been replaced with this program, is there still meaning in entering into this program, right, for high ability learners? And what does it even mean to be a high ability learner? And what is the value of that? So these are some of the things that we will be covering tonight. And of course, anytime that you all have any questions, feel free to also put that in the chat. And Teacher Alvin and Teacher Andy
Yes.
are also here. So Teacher Alvin will take over from here. Okay? Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I need to be online because I was rushing quite a number of
Mhm.
things. As you can see, I'm teaching master speakers as well. It's part and parcel of the pathways for everybody. And in case you all do not know me, I'm one of the lead teachers for both Mind Stretcher and master speakers. And I have been teaching students at all levels over the years. So I want to have a sense of everything here right now. Why are you here in this seminar today? Okay, so for those of you who are physically there, you can say it out. For those of you online, maybe you can check. Why is it you are in this seminar today? Why am I asking that? So that we get a sense of the expectations and we will be addressing all your queries. But we just need to get a sense first, okay? So yeah, please feel free. And remember, this is not and whatever I'm sharing with you, whatever we are sharing you, we're going to share the docs with you latest by next week. Why latest by next week? Because we're going to compile a few more things like examples of what we do and everything and share with you. So I think will be more instructive. But whatever we're going through today, we'll be sharing with you. So don't worry about taking down notes and everything. Just focus on asking questions, any questions at all, so that we will be able to understand. Okay, so as I mentioned again, are there any questions? Why? Okay, I'm going to ask at random. Okay, I'm going to ask at random. Or Andy, there are some parents there.
Uh, current, Currently,
Okay, never mind. Okay,
just
so I'll
just
ask
parents
this.
online.
Sorry, the
Just parents
parents are
online.
online now. Okay, so can we have some parents just asking a question? Why are you here today? Okay, or to make it easier, how many of you have kids who are in primary three? How many of you have kids who are primary three? Can we just have a show of hands? Okay, JNT, right? JNT. So, okay, so okay, can I get JNT to share a little bit? So your son is in primary three, right? So what type of character is your child? Bear in mind that it is very important that we are not too fixated on stereotyping. Why do I say this? Because kids will always evolve over time. Okay, very, very important. There's always a danger of stereotyping, but at a certain age, we always have a sense of things. And remember, these are not cast in stone, it will evolve over time. Okay. If you're afraid to ask questions, no problem. Anytime at all, you can just type in the chat. Okay. So maybe I won't get you to ask questions. Maybe we will start the sharing. Curious and fidgety, very good. Okay. So Janti, thank you for sharing this point here. So Jayanti typed that the child is curious and fidgety. Now there are many different characteristics, and these characteristics will change over time as well, and they are not unique to certain kids. Okay, so it is very important. That's why I said that it is always very dangerous to categorize kids, because kids, if you categorize them, then sometimes it is too fixated, and that is why also there is such a thing called a psychromatic test. A psychromatic test is like they judge your character, but I always believe they let's say you are introvert, they say you are an introvert based on all the so-called questions they ask. But there's always a danger to this. Many people get labeled, and because of that, they are stuck. I always believe that all of us can change. depending on how we look at things, how we broaden our mindset. And this is very, very important. Okay, now let us get it rolling. Okay, let's get it rolling. Let me share my slides here. So with me here today are two people. We have Wei Lun and Andy. Now Wei Lun is our academic director, and Andy is the head of our GEP program, which will be changed the next year, right? So this is exactly right here because over the time we have taught a lot of students. And for those of you who do not know me, in the past I used to be a co-founder of MindStretcher. Because I'm a co-founder, obviously I see a lot of students. Okay, I see a lot of students because unlike most co-founders at other places, I actually teach. I write the curriculum, so I'm pretty much involved for the last 18 years. Yes, last 18 years. So that is why we can talk about a lot of things, because we have seen many students at all stages, top students in Singapore, GEP students, high ability students, so forth, developing students, growing students. So remember that everything is a phase, and all these things can change over time. And before I forget, I just want to emphasize this point again. You know, you always read in the press that PSLE is a high stakes exam. I always tell parents and students that is not the correct way of it. I think the press, and by extension, certain people would sensationalize this place. It's not a high stakes exam. It is an important exam, yes, but it's not nowhere near as high stakes compared to what you're doing in JC, in the polytechnic, or by some of you for the O levels. This is a fact. Once you reach that stage, you realize that what I say with you, how can anything be so high stakes when it's just a primary six? So I just want to address this, because I think this term is used incorrectly most of the time by people who are not really in the system. So it becomes a thing. PSLE is important, yes, but under no means is it a high stakes exam. It is high stakes exam if you view it that way. But ultimately, what matters, as I tell all students, is what happens when you go beyond that. That will determine whether it's high stakes or not. Okay, but more of that at another time. Yeah, so right now let's get the sharing done. So we are going to share this document with you, so not to worry. I am just pulling it out first, and you will get this document. You will get this document sometime next week, because we are going to add in a few other things which will be constructive for you. Yeah. So that is why whenever we share, so you don't need to take down notes, you just need to listen and focus. Your job here would be to focus on asking questions. Okay, give me a while. Sorry about that. Okay, let's talk about this right now. I'm going to share my screen. You will get this document, so don't worry. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Wei Lun and Andy, can you see my screen?
Not yet, it's a black
It's not yet. Yeah, it's
Not yet.
black screen yet. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a lag around there. Sorry about that. Not yet. It's loading for some. I think my face is frozen as well.
That's right.
We'll share on
Okay.
our side. Then you can we can share on our
Yeah,
side.
okay. Maybe you share your side, because my screen is frozen. So what
Can.
happens is that my face is also frozen. So I will lock out and lock in again. Okay, so you can share on your side. Then I will
Can.
talk about it in general. Thank you very much. Sorry about that. I think my screen is frozen. Let me lock out, and I need to restart my computer. Okay, I need to restart my computer. It's not frozen. Sorry about that. And once you share the screen, Luna, I want to talk about. Okay, never mind. You just give me a couple of minutes. I will be logging in again. I hope
Sure.
even my laptop, everything is frozen. My keys are
Can.
frozen. So sorry for the technical error. Then we
Yeah.
talk about.
So as Alvin is toggling on his laptop, just to highlight also. So what we are going to go through first is really in terms of the changes at the MOE level, right? So actually, if you look at this particular slide that Alvin will be covering later, is really the series of changes that MOE has announced, particularly over the last year and taking effect this year as well. So we will be going through that, and really in terms of some of these key changes and what are the implications for all of you. In fact, for all of you here, because you probably are parents of like P1 and P2 students, right? It will directly impact you actually, because just as a fact, if you all see for the P3 GEP selection and screening test, actually this year 2025 is the very last year that the GEP two-stage test will be happening in that format. So from next year onwards, so from 2026 onwards, right, all of you, right, if you are P1, P2 going on to P2 and P3, you will no longer be doing the two-stage GEP selection test. So that's already one key change that you will see actually. And like what Alvin mentioned, actually what we will do is that this is a compilation of materials. Why do we think it's important at this stage? Because I think for a lot of parents as well, you can think of it this way, right? So as our students go into primary school, I think the thought on our mind is that, for our students here, how do we think about, developing them? Do they also have that potential for high ability learning? And what does it mean to be a high ability learner, right? So what are the skills? And in fact, some of these things that carry over from the GEP system, and how does MOE actually think about it? So if you look at some of the, release and some of the press articles around that, MOE at the time and the minister has also come out to talk about how this new program, right, is really about inspiring that curiosity, that love for learning among the children, right, and to move slightly away, in a sense, from just pure focus on exam prep. Because if you look at it really in terms of the old system, right, when you look at the gifted education system, a large part of it was really with regards to exam preparation and all that as well. Okay, so I think Alvin is back, right, and we have the materials online now. So I will hand back over to Alvin to take over from here, right, from the first page.
William, can you go right to the front of the document?
Yeah.
So showing
Yeah.
the PSLE slides. Okay, here. Okay, now I want everybody to take a look at this. Okay, I want everybody to take a look at these stats. Now think about why I am showing these stats. William, can you scroll a little bit higher? Because I think parts of it is cut down, is cut off. Yes, okay. So you take a look at this. So I want everybody to think about it. I want everybody to think about it. Because your high ability growth learners, okay, remember MOE is trying to identify top 10% of high ability growth learners, right? So right now, my question to you is this: top 10% under the new PSLE scoring system, which PSLE score do you think they're going to get? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Just make a guess. And I want to see your answers in the chat because everybody needs to be aware of this so that we get a sense of direction. We get a sense. So please type in the chat. There's no right or wrong. You just need to. Okay, good. I see some answers. 4. Okay. Any other answers? Any other answers? The reason why I'm addressing this question is very simple. For the last 20 years, there have been, I would say, practically 99.99% of all parents and kids will get this wrong. Okay, whether it's under the PSLE scoring system, OT score, or the AL score. Okay, so let me ask you so I only see one person putting in the chat. The rest, please feel free to type it because we all need to be interactive, right? Okay, yes. Any other answers? Because I only see one. It is important for you to get an angle. That's why a sense of perspective is always very important. Okay, a sense of perspective is always very, very important. What do you think? Okay, I see a number here. PSLE score of 4, your top 10%. Generally, good try. But let me tell you, if you get PSLE score of 4, you are not in top 10%. You are in top 0.5%. Okay, it's not top 10%. So if we think that people I'm just giving you an example because I was an RI scholar. Okay, I was an RI scholar. Wei Lun was also from RI. Wei Lun was the top student in RI. So being an RI scholar, I know exactly how these systems work. So whether it's PSLE score, yes, I may be from a different generation, but the rules, the bell curve will still apply. So I give everybody a sense. 4 or 5, if you get 4 or 5, you're top 1% in Singapore. Okay? If you get 5, you are around top 2 to 3% in Singapore. So 4 is top 1%. It is not top 10%. Okay? So this is why people think that it's so easy to get 4 and many people get 4. No. 4 is 1% maximum. Okay? Yeah. 4 and 5 if is around the top 3%. How do I know this? I'll tell you the secrets later on. Okay, but for me, it is purely mathematical. It's not even guesswork. It's purely mathematical. So everybody needs to get it clear. So you see that we have got many students getting their range right, so forth, and all these students are in the top 1%. They are not like top 10%. So okay, now that you know this, top 10%, what do you think the scores are? So I just giving you the yardstick already. Generally, for your top 1%, generally 5 and below your top 3%. So my next question is, bearing this in mind, what do you think is the top 10%? It's not exact science, but more or less. Anybody wants to guess? You see, even though your AL scores are not based on a bell curve, whatever you say, when you plot the student population, it will always be a bell curve, whatever the school system. 6 or 7, good try. 6 or 7 is good try. Is still too 6-7% is not top 10%. It is still within the top percent. 7 is not correct. I will tell you, more or less it is around 8. More or less it's 8. So everybody has to know. So that you all have a sense, okay, it's around 8. Sometimes it can go to 9 depending on the year. It will never go down to 7. Not possible because of the way the population is and because of the way the number of schools is like this. So everybody gets a rough idea, okay? Which is also the reason why if you get 8, you have a chance of going into an IP score. IP school. IP school, why IP school? IP school just means that you don't do your O-levels. I want to repeat this, very, very important. Going to an IP school means you're in a more competitive school. But does it make you academically better? The answer is, it depends on what you do in the school, because there are many IP students who study who don't do well as well. This is the reality. That's why you need to know the system. And that's exactly the reason why I'm showing you this perspective, so that you all have a sense on what we need to do, not just because of this high ability growth system. It is for you to how to progress as a student at primary 3, lower primary, upper primary, and lay the foundation onwards for secondary school and beyond. This is very, very important. That's why I'm giving you the whole spectrum of things round. Okay, clear? So it's not 8. It will never go down to 7. It's simply not possible. 8 and sometimes it's 9, depending on the IP school you're talking about. Okay, fine. So now everybody knows. So if you look at the numbers here, yes. So we have got a lot of students. This doesn't over the last couple of years. Okay, now let's go on to the next point. William, can you? So everybody has a sense now, right? So last time under the old system, top 1%. So you realize the top 1%. Now you see. Now I want you to see this link. Does it mean that top 1% all GP students? Okay, so assuming that I say top 1% is 4. Do you think that all GP students get 4? Put down that question, yes or no? So this is the point we sure need to know, and that's why I said that. Answer is no, definitely no. In fact, it doesn't mean that you're a GP student, you will do better than a non-GP student. I'm telling you this as fact because we have many of these students in secondary school, and I see them practically every week. Okay, that's what everybody needs to know. This is also why I say that all of us can evolve over time. If we can't evolve over time, then we are stuck. Okay, and we also got to believe that there is a journey for everybody. That's why we should not be too fixated. Why not too fixated? Because it is a journey. So the mindset and the foundation is absolutely core. The reason why I'm saying this is also like that, because when I was in primary school, I'm very frank with you, because I told you that I was an RI scholar. Andy was also in fact, all of us here are all scholars. The 3 of us here, you see, we were all ex-scholars. All ex-scholars given by the Singapore government. Okay, so we want to tell you about this. You see, why do I say this? So I came from this small town called Malaysia. A small town. See, I'm getting red low. I'm 53 years old this year. The brain cells are not working so well anymore. I came from this small town called Batu Pahat. Okay, And even Butterpart, when you Singapore, that's why I never use the word neighborhood schools. For me, all schools are schools. By saying that they are neighborhood schools, it actually gives them a bad name. And there are many great students from these neighborhood schools. That's why I always say, so if you call these schools neighborhood, then my school in Butterpart will be an absolutely, totally village school. This is exactly what it is. But you see, even in the primary school system where there was not much pressure and there was everything, I was barely in top 20 in my primary school. Barely in top 20 in primary school. Okay? So you see, but this is a kampong school. It's a kampong school. But as in secondary school, I grew, I developed, I became more. The reason why I can still be in RI despite being 20 because I only went to RI in secondary 3. Okay, Singapore government gave me a scholarship in secondary 3, and that was important for me because in primary school, I was not a good student, but so Sec 1 and Sec 2 in Malaysia, I worked very, very hard. And along the way, I built this confidence, I built this sense of resilience. I think it's very important, which is why for me, in my case, I'm a late developer. Okay, so when I went to RI Sec 3 and Sec 4, I was a top 5% student. Okay, I was the top 5. I was I studied very hard, yes, but still it requires a lot of effort to be a top 5% in RI. But you see, I'm showing you that everything is possible. The only thing which worked for me was that I'm not too bad a student, but I was very determined and my attitude is very good. So this is what I'm trying to say. And it is a phase of learning for me. So that is why we should not be categorizing whether you're this. Okay, so it's very important. So why I'm saying this? So top 1%, and I think this approach is great by broadening the base. So the key shifts, the progress for high ability learners will now be school-based. This is very, very important as well. Why? I think it's very important because in the past, we used to only go to certain schools. Okay, certain schools you have the 9 so-called GEP schools, but I think every school is quite a good school. And this is what I sincerely believe. What is different between the schools is just how competitive it is. You realize I never use the word good or bad. No, good or bad depends on what you do in that school as a student. Very, very important, okay? And what you do in the school depends on a few things. Your attitude, whether you're hardworking, whether everything clicks for you, and so forth. Very, very important, okay? So key shifts right now is school-based, which is important because right now everybody has a chance, okay? And so the target, why do I say 3,000 students? I tell you, so right now, the population has decreased, okay? When I first started teaching at my structure, Dragon Year, it's absolutely 60,000 students per that Dragon Year, but you realize it's practically half right now. So it's around 30,000. Last PSLE was a Dragon Year, so you had 38,000 students, but over time, your kids or whatever, it may have decreased. So it's more or less, no, it's 3,000 plus, okay? So we really benefit. Now, this is important. Why? It means that this program is now accessible to a lot of students. Do you understand? Top 1% is entirely different from top 10%. Clear? Now, why this matters for your child? Because if your child's like JR, you should that your child shows curious, being ready to learn, problem solving interest. I think this is important. I always feel that the environment is important. Okay, why environment? What made me? I realized all these things. You see, back in Malaysia, I was not a lazy student, but I had no environment to motivate me. Okay, I had no environment, so I was competing with people who don't really study. So this is the reality. But when I went to RI, it was a completely different story altogether. I was forced to do it. Not because I was forced to do it, simply because of the environment. Okay, so I think this is important. So the environment and being exposed to certain things will stretch your ability. So I think this is very important to find out as well. Okay, why this matters for a child? Okay, Wei Lun has gone. For you as parents, what does it mean? This means that more access, less disruption. So if you don't need to go to a GP school anymore, you can be within your same school. I think this is great. Okay, and this was a quote by PM Lawrence Wong last year at the National Day Rally 2024 when he said that the GP prescribed and modified. Every primary school will have its own programs to stretch the students in the areas of strength and interest. So where are these areas? It will always be generally at this current stage, science, English, and mathematics, okay, at the upper primary levels. But obviously at the primary 3 level, for the test or whatever, we'll talk about that later, it will be English and mathematics in its current form. It may evolve over time. Okay, so what is the high ability? So first of all, we need to define. Again, I want to caution about definitions. I mean, this is what we think, but I want to caution that these things are very fluid. It's not cast in stone. Okay, and it can change. I always repeat, it can change depending on who you are. You can be a late developer, or you can start very quickly. Then you better, because we've taught so many students. We know some students get into GP, but after that, when they go to secondary school, they don't do very well, because then they realize that they're pretty normal. Okay. On the other hand, you have students who never got into GP, but because they work very hard, they easily beat the so-called GP students. And we see this every year. Okay, trust me when I say we see this every year. So it's very important. So most important for me is one thing. Number one, high ability definitely means, okay, make no mistake, here it refers to academic ability. Okay, because this is only the domain they are measuring. The only domain they're measuring is academic ability at this current definition, which is why it demonstrates. That's why your test has no other thing except the standard English and Maths. So I think we need to be aware. So ultimately, the way it is defined right now in the current system is still based on academic ability. But I tell you why this is it. Because you are relatively good academically, then you have the ability to stretch yourselves in other areas. So this is what we mean. And this is what the government's intention as well. Because if you are quite well academically, then you can have more room to explore other things. It's something like the GP, but now expanded, right? It was exactly the same logic for the IP. Now, for those of you, because I taught the first IP students and I helped them get into DSA, okay, I'm just trying to, so when IP started in 2004, so I tell you what happened now, when IP first started in 2004 or 2005, I can't quite remember, yeah, but it was like 20 years ago, the first 3 IP schools were RI, RGS, and ACS. Okay, these were the first 3 IP schools. Right now, we got around 15, 20 IP schools, but in that time, first started. Now, the whole idea at the time, why the government stated scrap the O-level exam for these more competitive students, is because they think that these students are quite good academically. So you remember, quite good academically, so that they can invest more time in engaging in other areas to stretch themselves in multiple domains. So this you realize that now this is now filtered down to the primary school level. So I want everybody to have this understanding, because this is exactly what it is. So the growth part. Growth, why we mention growth, and as I keep stressing, we are not stereotyped. We can always grow. Even if you are good, we can be better. If you're not so good, we can be better. Absolutely, but you must believe in it. Okay, you must believe in it. Okay, so growth, but MOE emphasizes that academic should be more holistic. Why? We all know, okay, now what do we mean by more holistic? Right now, as it currently steps, GP, you only got one shot, right? This is the last year you got GP screening and selection test. You got 2 exams, you pass it, you get a GP, you fail it. I won't say you fail it, you don't emerge as the top 1%, you won't go to GP, right? But right now, they're telling you that even if you don't get into this high growth pathway, you can do it at primary 4, primary 5, primary 6. This is very important. Why? Because this is what we have always said. This is what we have always said. In fact, if you attended our seminars, since 2020, we have already been telling people that we are quite sure that the GEP program will be scrapped. Why? From experience. And it makes sense, because we have taught thousands of students over the years. For me, it makes sense to be scrapped, especially since the GP secondary was scrapped 12 to 20 years ago. It was way overdue. So there are certain things which for me has to happen. And this HAG is a step in the right direction. This one I absolutely believe. So when PM Lee said that the GP is scrapped, I actually applauded. Okay, I should applaud it. And I told my colleagues, we have been saying this for the last 5 years. 5 years before PM Lawrence Long, we said that it should be scrapped, because it has to be, given how the world has evolved, given how society has evolved. Okay, fine. Now, characteristics you might see, I repeat, these characteristics are just some general characteristics. It's not like the Bible, okay? It can change all the time, and different kids may have different characteristics. Gets bored. So just now, Jaya, you mentioned the kids is curious, gets bored easily. This generally happens, okay? Generally happens. Okay, so it is true. Why I say this? Because at some levels, the reality is that the school syllabus is too easy. Okay, I'm not saying for everybody, but at some levels. Okay, so when it is too easy, you get bored easily. This is true. Okay, this is true. Easily grasp new ideas and enjoys thinking about how and why rather than just what. Okay, these are all this is just when, and kids evolve over time. When I was young, I did never thought about this. As I mentioned, I was not a high ability kid. It's only when I was older that I became a little bit more high ability. Okay, so I think that's why I said it is a growth. It is the growth. It's not cast in stone. Very, very important. Has an interest in abstract thinking and puzzling. Loves to explore, ask questions, and these are things which we can always nurture. Very important. We can nurture because it's just a case of being exposed to things. Okay, so this is what we want to try to do. My even uneven performance in strong areas is fine. May show early readiness or late blooming. Hence, the flexible story is important. Clear? So I'm sure that this in general will be quite true, but of course, this is not the be all and end all. Okay, why this shift in mindset matters? Your GEP is the be all and end all. You need to be strong, relatively strong in both. Okay, so I want everybody to know this as well. Why? Why? Because whatever that is reflected, and why do I keep bringing in the secondary school domain? Because all the changes in the secondary school today are filtered down to the primary school domain. And this is exactly what has happened. Okay? So why do we say this? For those of you who attend our secondary school talks, you realize that right now it has changed. For the last couple of years, the system has changed, right? Last time you got O-level stream, you got N-level. But they realized that if I put all students in N-level, what is going to happen? They are stigmatized for life, N-level student, but they can be pretty good in English, but not so good in the other subjects. So this is exactly the same model which they're doing now. Okay, so by doing this, they are saying that I don't need to be good in 2 or 3 subjects. If I'm good in one, I can get into the high ability program for that subject. Very, very important. Whereas GP is you need to be good in both, relatively. Okay, so the focus is more on the strengths and the growth potential. I think this is pretty much important, and this for me is definitely a step in the right direction. Because if you were to ask me, you see, so I just tell you my own personal experience. All the teachers here different experience. So for me, what I find easy for me, because I'm a little bit more natural, are subjects like English. English comes very naturally to me, whether it's writing, whether it's speaking, but that's because I do a lot of reading, so my English becomes very good. But speaking is something which I nurtured over time. Yeah, people think that I'm a natural speaker, but no, I can speak naturally for hours at a stretch without preparation. But people think I'm a natural speaker, but no, I could not speak like that when I was young. That's why I say everything is a journey. But I believe that as long as we change our mode, we can always become more confident speakers. And I only started speaking, you won't believe it, only when I started working. Because when I was in primary school, secondary school, I was traumatized by the act of speaking, which many people are. But that's why I said everything is the mindset. Once I had the switch, then it's easy for me to nurture. So it's very important. Okay, now, okay, at this point in time, we invite the audience. Are there any questions? Okay, are there any questions? The kids follow. Okay, so thank you to one parent for asking that question. Let us address this question. Okay, everybody take a look online, or those people are not online, I will please feel free to ask your questions. Very, very good question. So one question by this parent is this: these kids follow the mainstream curriculum, question mark, or follow a higher ability curriculum, question mark, under the new framework? Okay, so right now we must understand. So this high ability program is just like the GP program. So I want everybody to type down at which levels do they apply to? Is it primary 3, primary 1, primary 2, or primary 4, primary 5, primary 6? Everybody needs that. I give you a clue. The GP system applies to which level? Yes, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so the important thing is this. That's why we need to understand. This is a very, very good question. Okay, so it's a little bit different. Now that you ask this question, I have got to explain a bit so that you understand why this is important, because everybody has got to understand this, and why your main curriculum is still absolutely important. Okay, I want to stress this again. Everybody take a look. If there are physical parents there, make sure that they know this question. Okay, this is follow. So I need to bring the GP curriculum so that you all understand why, because it affects this answer to this question. So right now, under the current model, last year, the GP, obviously you got the GP students, you still have GP students, entering this year, and they will be GP students next year, 2006, 2027, 2028. That will be last batch of GP students in Singapore, 2028. Okay, but so we still have ongoing. So in this system, what is going to happen is like that. GP students, they have their own set of curriculum. So it's different from the mainstream. It's especially so for English and mathematics. Not so much for Chinese, not so much for science. Science just a little bit more hands-on. But English, why I say English? Because they learn a lot of things which are not in the syllabus, like types of literature, the ways to express yourself, different forms of writing. But this is where the problem arises, because we teach all of this. The problem is that your foundation is not good. Okay, so why are we explaining all these literary components when your basic foundation is not good? This is always a problem, okay? But obviously it depends on what type, again, within the category of GP student. So the reality is that the GP student has a different set of curriculum, and everything will come back to the mainstream only in primary 6. Clear? Clear? Only in mid-year of primary 6, everything will be mainstream because they are preparing for the exam. So that part is clear. So the GP curriculum is differentiated. Okay, and what the things they cover on a daily basis may not be what they cover in the exams. The exams are always the same components. Okay, you got comprehension, you got close, you got writing, but very little. So there is a problem for some of them, because that's why some of them do now, because they do a lot of things which are not tested. Okay, clear? That's number one. So the reason why I'm saying this right now is that right now, do they follow the mainstream curriculum? What is the answer? Wei Lun, do you think they follow the mainstream curriculum? This is just a discussion, This is just a discussion, so don't worry. Sorry.
Yeah, okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we just need to unmute the part.
Okay.
So in this part, I think with regards to what they updated previously, if you take the
Yes.
cue from the GP, I think that there is alignment in terms of the topics and whatever there's a key concepts that are covered for that particular levels lah. So I think there's alignment in terms of the curriculum.
Yes.
But where they come in terms of, I think, broader differentiation is really in terms of the high ability level skill sets. So I
Yes.
think there are some of these skills that is actually imparted that's a bit different. That's why if you look at what MOE has talked about, they have also talked about all these modules that the students will have to do, both in terms of in the classroom and actually out of school. And some of these, for example, like science, right? If you look at it, they could be learning something similar, like for example, like transport in plants. But here, I think there's more scope for them in terms of inquiry-based learning, in terms of understanding how this particular question is applied in a real-world context, something different, something that is a bit more non-routine, something that's a bit more contextual. So I think that's one part that is also in terms of overlay, in terms of that high ability learning skills. And I think some of it, if you look at how that comes through also, is really in terms of first, compact learning. The idea that while they're learning the same concept, they can actually learn it faster and in a more compact kind of way. And second, also is like what I mentioned in terms of applying that in different contexts. And you see that that's something that's going to be very important, because like what Alvin said, as you learn that more at the P4 and P5 level, it does help actually when you go to P6 as well. And the reason for that is because you will realize actually at P6, everybody has to take the PSLE. Right, everybody has to take the PSLE. But what you all should realize here is that increasingly over time, the PSLE has become very different compared to the past. So right now, actually, PSLE also features a lot of what we call as this kind of non-routine questions. So things that you cannot just do by rote memory or by drills or practice. And these kind of questions require you to think about the concepts that you have learned. So if I give you an example, in 2021, there's this very famous in PSLE math, Helen and Ivan coin counting question. So some of you may have seen that. And recently this year for PSLE, right, some of you may have heard about for science, the OTA question, right? The OTA covered in the leaf. And then why does the leaf get burned but the OTA does not get burned, right? So this part, actually, if you look at why I give these examples is because you realize these kind of questions require, it's not any different in terms of the concepts learned, right? It's the same concept. But it requires the students to be able to do that inference, to apply what they have learned in different contexts, and then to be able to reason based on that. And that itself is a kind of skill that I would say that, for high ability learners, they are put in a better position. So I'm just using that as an example here.
Thank you very much. And this is a very important point. Ultimately, you still need to be aware of your you need to be aware of core curriculum because you will still be sitting for your PSLE, right? But at the same time, we're giving you access to new skills. And this is not something new, I repeat. I give you all a link, right? Enrichment programs and activities for high ability learners. And this has been around for the last 17, 18 years. I know because I have many students who are not GP students. We have many students in non-GP. So for instance, you got your wits and words inter-school debate. This is English enrichment. But this applies to many students, okay, in school. So the more high ability students in that school will actually be take. So let me rephrase it another way. Your GEP in the past top 1%, but they have another 7%. 7% given access to all these extra activities based on how well you did for the first. So wits and word is one. E2K mathematics, E2K science program are something which I see every year because we got many students in these programs and they're not GP students, but because of their relatively higher ability in these subjects, they get invited to take part in this. The school will nominate and they take part. Okay, so you realize that. So right now, this program is now formalized. So I will expect all these programs to be available to the top 10% and not just and to most schools rather than just a few select schools. Okay, so at the end of the day, your bread and butter you still need to cover, but they are going to expose you to new schools, which you take outside the classroom or a specific to train you to be curious and do other things. Okay, so this system will not prepare you in advance for the school exam. I think we need to make it clear. Chan Chun Sing, the education minister, made it very clear. It's not going to prepare you in advance. It's just to stretch yourself in other areas in terms of thinking, curiosity, and so forth. It is for me, it is a life skill. It doesn't give you the extra edge when it comes to the formal. The formal exam, you still need to do your dues. Clear? So I think everybody. So the whole idea is to be able to stretch yourself in multiple domains. Yep. So thank you for that question. And please refer to the link which I just gave you. This is ongoing. We have got many students in these programs, even if they're not in the GEP program. And this is something which we suspect will be available. And you realize that this is organized by who? This program, enrichment programs of high ability learners, this is actually organized by the gifted education branch. Okay, so this is why I said that it has always been around, except that if you're not aware of it, you do not know. But because we teach all these students every year, we look at help them for their DSA, we see all these things. Okay, so we will share this document. I'm not going to go through in great detail with you. We share this document, but I just want to demonstrate. So because of that, I'm going to show you some of the worksheets before Andy takes over for mathematics. We will share these documents. Don't worry. Okay, but the whole idea is that so that you see. Okay, so I'm going to share some. I'm going to share some documents right now. Give me a while. I'm going to pull out some documents right now so that at least we get a sense of what do we mean by stretching. Okay, what exactly do we mean by stretching? Give me 1 minute or so. Let me pull out my document.
Yeah, so as Alvin is going through the putting out the document, so just to highlight also, this is also our way of helping students, right, with regards to high ability learning. As we have seen just now, actually, if you look at it in terms of a high ability learner, there are certain skills that are needed for them to thrive. And this here, actually, when we look at it in terms of our materials, we are also trying to see how we can use that in a way to help them, right, in terms of preparing them, equipping them with the foundation so that they can thrive in such a program. Because if you see in the past, right, actually, if you look at just a GEP alone, it was really just like a test prep kind of thing, right? So when people think about GEP, they just think of it as, okay, if I get myself ready for the GEP, I clear it, then I get the GEP and that's it. But I think really beyond that, if you look at it here, it's really a more holistic way of thinking about it, taking a step back, is beyond just test readiness now, but it's really about really acquiring all those skills that are needed. If you look at a high ability learner, what does that constitute, right? So for example, if you look at mathematics, beyond just the concepts, it also involves things like logical reasoning, inference, visualization, deduction. If you look at English, right, so building beyond the typical components of like speaking, writing, reading, is also the capacity to apply all this, be it in terms of writing in a more practical context, or even in terms of like, just literary analysis. The idea that, literary analysis, of course, is something that is done more at the secondary level, but you'll see here, it's really about, dipping their toes in water, getting them to really understand some of these, be it in terms of comprehension, how do we deduce the meaning, how do we infer, And you will see also, you see actually at the lower primary levels and the middle primary levels, actually, if you look at the questions, they are more focused on the basic type questions, right? In terms of just retrieving information from the comprehension passage and then just getting the answer. But then if you look at it as they go to higher levels, actually there's more inferential based questions. But these are things that then we will also socialize and sensitize the students to, because also these are things that will help them, right, in terms of this high ability learning. And this is what we'll share with you now lah, in terms of the English part and the math part. And I think these are also important tips that as parents, right? So now if you look at it, if your child is P1 and P2, what are already some of the things that you can start to expose your child to, right? To get them interested in. What are some of the skills that will be useful to start to have them to build this foundation that will come in helpful when they go to P3 and then subsequently to P4, 5, and 6. Because the reality is, as Alvin is still sharing the slide, to see whether you can get into that program, right? There will still be some kind of way to identify. So how the school will do that is that they will usually do it like at P3. So it will be like the equivalent of a test as well. So you go through the test, you will see, okay, you're suitable for this, you go through. But that's not the only part. So P4, P5, P6, there is flexibility for you to enter to if you do show the interest and the ability lah. Right? So now I'll pass back to Alvin to go through using
I'm just showing you a sample. I'm not going to go to in great detail, but don't worry, we'll share with all of you who came at next week. Okay, just to give you an idea. So you take a look at this. You realize that this is not an ordinary comprehension. Take a look at this literary analysis. Willow, you can see this screen, right? Everybody can see this screen? Can? Okay, you realize a couple of things. Literary analysis, comprehension, and writing skills. So we need to understand that it is a combination of a couple of things because this is actually high-level stuff. So number one, things you notice that we are exposing you to different text type, and this is a current affairs. Okay, this is a current affairs, and this will not be your ordinary primary 3 level. Okay, in fact, it is primary 4. So obviously there is a combination of questions. Okay, the combination of questions, factual, inferential, and so forth. Okay, and the reason why you realize that ours is also different. In the past GP exams, all MCQ, and the answers are quite close. Okay, GP exams all MCQ, but the answers are very close. So we need to warm you all up. But at the end of the day, you still need to prepare for your school exam, which is why we have the literary analysis and comprehension questions. So you realize that all these questions, take a look, all these are high level literary analysis skills. Okay, what do Mr. Wong's hobbies and public image suggest about his approach to leadership? This is not something which you can know from this passage just by reading. You need to understand its essence and need to distill it. So this is something which everybody can learn the techniques on how to distill information. And literary analysis is a big problem for many IP students in secondary school. I can tell you absolutely, whatever IP school you go to, many of them have this problem. Why? I tell you what is the fundamental problem. English is not good enough. Primary school English and secondary school English, I always tell students, how they become good at English? When will you know that you're really good in English? When you reach secondary school. You get AL1 for English, it doesn't mean you're good. It means that you did well for the PSLE. But whether you're good or not, secondary school, it'll be very, very clear. You know why? Because there's no more MCQ. Okay? There's no more MCQ. So clearly you realize, so these are high-level questions, but does it train you to prepare? Does it prepare you for your school exam? Totally. Because if you can do this, your school exam is easy. Okay, clear? So you realize that a couple of things, I won't go through all the questions, but I'm just giving you an example. So again, you see, all these things are inferential questions. The phrase continuity and change in the passage suggests that, and let me tell you, this is actually a phrase which lower secondary, okay? Lower secondary, but we want students to train, to read between the lines. Very, very important. Okay, so I won't go to do this. So you realize, so here you got comprehension skills, you got inferential skills, you got analytical skills, you got literary analysis skills. So a few things are inside there already. Okay, that's number one. Number two, you realize that we also have a creative fun writing component because at the end of the day, you need to be able to write. So you write a fun writing segment, Dear PM Lawrence Wong. situational writing, different thought size, informal letter, also relevant for school exams, and we make it a fun writing. So imagine you're writing a short note to Prime Minister Lawrence Wong in about 80 to 100 words. Share one idea you have for making Singapore an even better place. Okay, so forth. So you realize that it is use a friendly and positive tone and make your message interesting or funny if you wish. Here we want to encourage creativity, and the most important thing for us is that feel free to express your ideas as long as it's not sexist in nature, as long as it's not racial in nature, as long as it's not religious in nature. I think we are cool to write everything or even speak about it. So this is what we try to nurture even in our master speakers classes, which is just realized, in case you all do not know, my stretchers, the students are now the champions of the national contest. Pio and Praishan, they have been our students for many, many years. So they're both in master speakers as well as mind stretcher, and they are the now national champions in upper sec and lower sec when it comes to speaking, because all these things we train them. So that's why I say everything is a journey. Everything is a journey. And speaking is not good enough. Speaking, you need to have a good foundation in English as well. So I think all these things, okay? So yeah, bread and butter. I'm just showing you some ideas. So let's talk about this. What do we mean by general ability? General ability, so you realize that even our vocabulary context is always very important. Vocabulary is always going to be viewed in context. So again, these are all current affairs. This is about the ecosystem, about saving wildlife, all very current. So it's important that we are aware of all these things. So for me, we must do beyond the school, okay? Most schools would have this as narrative passages, story. But here we want to give you a variety. Why is it important? Because you need to get a sense of what goes on in the world. And this is important for the high ability learners. I always tell students, you need to be aware. You want to be a compelling writer, you want to be a compelling speaker, you want to be a top debater, you have to know the world. So here we incorporate it in all whatever we do at high ability. You realize that this is not your typical, in school, the easy stuff, all MCQ, right? But right now, you realize that all these things are inferential. Which word or phrase tells you that the forests are disappearing quickly? Identify that means pause suddenly. So this traces in vocab inferential skills as well. If you do not know, you guess, try to guess from the context. Okay, so you realize the theme for this week, orangutans losing. Same thing that orangutans in peril. So what do we mean? Right now it's MCQ, but again, it's more GEP type of MCQ. Cool? So that you all get a sense. Okay, so it's like I mentioned, this is how we stretch students and addresses both your mainstream curriculum as well as your high ability types. So we always want to try to prepare students for it in advance. Okay, now take a look at this general ability one. So we need to understand what we mean by general ability. General ability in all, even if you don't have it right now, the reality is that it's still important to know this. I tell you why. Because all these things, if in case you want to go for some BSA, these elements are in some of the tests, except it's not phrased as GP, it's part of the whole package. Everybody clear? And when you go to secondary school, depending on which secondary school you want to go to, you go to JC, you want to be active competitively or whatever, all these things will come into play. Okay? And this, in other words, general ability just means reasoning test. So reasoning test, two aspects. One in mathematics, one in English. So English has got to do with language. So I'll give you an example, right? So which word can you add to the beginning and end of words to make another word? So you realize that this is also, that's why I always tell students that English, GA is a function of your vocab. Your vocab good, you can easily do. Vocab not so good, we got no problem. Okay, that's why for me, building up vocabulary is a fundamental key skill. So again, I won't go through this, but you all get a sense of, you all get a sense. This one is definitely high ability. It's not just that it's really high ability stuff, and it forces you to think. And I always tell parents and students this, can we expose ourselves? Yes, we can. And I tell you why. Okay, I just share with you my experience. Okay, how did I get the scholarship to RI? Okay, every year there are 30,000 applicants. It's a huge number. Out of 30,000 applicants, they're only going to select around 20. So you realize it is really, really tough. I knew that I was good in English, not a problem for me. Mathematics, I was a big problem. I failed, but because my English was quite good, it pulled me up. The other component which I failed was general ability. Okay, general ability, when I was singing, I went to take the exam in RI. My grandmother brought me there in the year 1987. Okay, right, as I mentioned, I'm quite old already. 1987 is almost 38 years since I've come to Singapore. The reality was that when I sat for the general ability exam, I was stunned. General ability exam generally you got to do one question in 1 minute, 30 questions, 30 minutes. But I couldn't do half of it because I was seeing those questions for the first time. But because I've seen those questions before, I told my brothers how they can prepare for it. So all my brothers also subsequently got the scholarship simply because right now we know what to expect. So I tell them, okay, go and buy all the IQ books, get yourself exposed. I told my mother this was the case, and this was what happened. So I may not be a natural in IQ, but once I'm exposed to this, we can learn to see. I think this is what we always say, that anything which is like that, we can always grow ourselves. So this is the growth mindset is very important. Okay, I'm not really, really good in this, but once I see the pattern, I know what to look out for. It does it seem artificial? No, it's just a different sense of perspective. Pretty useful. Okay, so this is why I say high ability. Cool? And these are all the things which you must know. I'm just giving you a sample. I'm not going to show everything. And of course, just to show you the different types we have, so you realize that we always have different types. I think it's very important. Whereas that one was more, now we're talking about Loch Ness Monster. Okay, the legend beneath the lake. But in a fun and interesting way, okay? Gives you a historical perspective of Nessie, the famous hoax, Loch Ness Monster. Why is a loch? Why do you think so? There'll be various discussion questions. So you see, there is always different types of questions. Why we want to make it as interesting and diverse for students as possible. Okay, so at this point in time, I'll hand over to Andy and Weilun to share about mathematics. So you see, so I won't go through everything there, but just to give you a sense on, so what does it mean? Because so when you see that whatever does here is different from what you have in your school curriculum, because we have stretched many students before, we have all these students, and we know what is required because we ourselves has been through. So there's no one fixed pathway, but I think there are certain core skills which all of us have got to master. And once you master these skills, PSLE is not so difficult anymore. Okay, because the reality is that some of these questions actually do appear right now at the PSLE level. Not a lot, but these skills are absolutely fundamental. Okay, cool? Okay, Andy, I hand it over to you. So don't worry, we'll be sharing some of this. We'll be sharing. So give us some time next week. I'll package everything up nicely and email all of you because I think you have shown interest and we appreciate this.
Okay, thank you, Alvin. Hello, parents. My name is Teacher Andy. I'm the current master teacher for the GP program. But now, let me just show you our new high ability growth program for the mathematics subject. So for details of all the differentiated components, you may, this is a document which Alvin said we'll share with you soon. So you may also refer to it once you have it. Okay, let me just quickly bring you to this page. The distinct features about our MyStretcher Mathematics High Ability Growth Program. So in in uh, in this curriculum, we have actually planned it in two ways. There are first of all, we have this core curriculum segment, which means students will be learning all the conceptual fundamentals of the topics which are based on Ministry of Education's P3 mathematics syllabus. So, of course, being in this high growth program, we will be accelerating the coverage of all these topics. So, students will be learning these topics in advance, and not only in advance, the question which we have in these worksheets are also more difficult than the usual ones that they will be doing at school. So that is for the core curriculum. This is to ensure that students are expected to know and learn whatever is needed based on the school syllabus. So that's number one. So what's the second part of it? We call it the enrichment curriculum. So under the mathematics enrich curriculum, there are three components. First of all, we have mathematics Olympiad components. Why is it important? As we know, at P3 level, there are many students who actually take part in various maths Olympiad competitions organized by different organizations. One of the more popular ones, say for example, is the Kangaroo Maths, which is conducted by the Australians. So during certain weeks of the term, we will be sharing, working through with students maths maths Olympiad style questions. We'll give you a sample of some of these questions. So apart from maths Olympiads, the other two enriched curriculum components are general ability. Is similar to what Evan has mentioned earlier, and again, we'll be showing you some examples of those. And the third part is investigative studies. So not only students learn the concepts in the theoretical concepts based on the school curriculum, but we also will want to expose them how to use some of these concepts which they've learned in real life context, and also to make it more engaging and fun for them. So many of these projects uh, will be a hands-on group activity where children can think through and work through the problems together, and also be able to share in front of in front of their classmates in class about their findings. So that is the enriched part of the curriculum. So let me just quickly walk you all through the core curriculum first, followed by the enriched ones. So this is a typical worksheet. So sorry, before I forget, apart from as part of preparing the students
Yeah. So,
for the
so
high ability growth program, we will also have periodic diagnostic tests to measure their progress. So we will also be sharing with you a sample of the test which we'll be
yeah.
conducting periodically. Yes, Alvin.
So indeed the slides you can also show those portions, which you already
Yes.
prepared. Yeah. So it may be easier
Yep.
for them to see when you talk to
Yep.
the slides.
So yep. So say for example, so this is a example of maths Olympiad component we should be sharing with the students in class. So if you were to look at this question, these are definitely not your typical P3 standard type of questions. So are children expected to know how to solve this question? Yes, because if you were to look at the format of many of these maths Olympiad competitions, it's actually based on the Singapore school syllabus, so that the children are somewhat not lost completely. So there is some relevance in terms of the concepts being taught in school, but it's an extension to what they've learned because the questions are more varied, more a lot more difficult. So you can see some of these questions, sample of some of these questions here. So as you can see, the questions may be short, and it may seems very simple because there are not too many numbers in them. But if you were to look at question number one, a box has some numbers, one third of them plus 8 equals one half of them minus 4. So maybe just a matter of interest. Can we have some parents to try to got this answer and share with us in the chat?
So Sandy, maybe you want to make the screen bigger instead of double
Okay.
screen. Yeah, single screen,
So
make it bigger.
okay, yes. So maybe parents are at home, or you have your if you have your children with you, you may also have them work on this answer. Question number one.
Okay, so I think we need to understand a couple of points first. You must understand a few things. Number one, the GEP, so-called GEP screening exercise still remains. They may call it differently, they may call it this year, next year, high ability growth screening exercise, but make no mistake, there is still a screening exercise. This screening exercise will test your ability in English and mathematics. And only if you pass this round will you be selected for the high ability growth program. So I just want to emphasize this. Obviously, if you miss this round, you can always try to do it again in primary 4 and primary 5 or primary 6, depending on your level. There'll be diagnostic test, whatever. Okay, so it's important. And why do we say this? Because in the because we have trained many GP students, okay? And if you're exposed to it, if you look at it, you may not be able to do. But once you know the technique, you realize it's not too difficult. But you must know the technique. This is the point. So this is what I mean by exposure. So do these questions come up for your GP? It's not just relevant for your maths Olympiad. It does come up for your selection and your screening test. Obviously, in the past, selection a lot more difficult. But screening tests, many of our students find it easy. Why? Because we have exposed them to all of it. Okay, but right now, because it's not called GP anymore, so we have some of these elements in our in so-called mathematics, but is these techniques relevant for some of the questions you see in the screening? Absolutely. And by extension, also right now, for the last couple of years, PSLE, there are two or three unstructured questions. It can become in paper one, paper two, and there are all these type of questions already. So I just want everybody to be aware of this. So nothing is lost on. It's always good that we're exposed to it so that we can stretch ourselves, not necessarily for the exam, but in order to stretch ourselves for us to be able to think in a certain way. Okay, back to you, Andy.
Yep. So if you were to look at this question, first of all, it's worded differently. So this is not something that you will see in mainstream school examination papers. So I've not seen any answers in the chat. Never mind. Let me just quickly walk through with all of you the answer. And And is it something that children, is it a skill that children will need to know outside the school syllabus in order to answer this question? The answer is no. So let me just quickly bring you through the answer to this question. So the questions is, okay, so this is a solution to the question. So let me just quickly review the question with all of you again. So it says that a box has some marbles, one third of them plus 8 equals half of them minus 4. So if you were to ask any B3 student to solve this question, first of all, they would just think, how do I get started? How do I get started? Right? How do I even form an equation to solve this? Do I draw a diagram or do I write down some number sentence? So based on so what we do in this program is always to use methods which are taught at their level, which is relevant to their P3 mathematics syllabus. So in this particular question, the solution is as such: one third in terms of in this solution, one third here means 2 over 6 because this is a concept based on equivalent fraction. Now, if you were to see the P3 maths school syllabus, right, there is a section on equivalent fraction, but from the years of teaching primary three students, children do not understand why is it necessary to know what an equivalent fraction is and actually what it means in the real world. So we can see from this solution how we can use equivalent fractions as a concept to help us solve this question. So one third. So if I were to divide the entire piece into three parts, and if a person has one part, it's also same to say that the person has 2 out of 6, right? And likewise, half means 4 over 6. Now, now, if you were to make both of these into 6 parts, then it becomes easy. Why? Because now we can start to compare them fairly. Now that brings us to the next concept, which we will teach students in our Mind Stretcher program. Is this particular set of codes, which we term it Mind Stretcher power codes. So these are heuristic methods which children will need to learn, right, in order to solve some of these category of questions effectively and quickly. So in terms of units, total units will be 6 because why? That is the denominator. So 3u plus 8 because that's what the question says, right? If one third of the marbles plus 8 equals means we transform this into a math statement, into a mathematical sentence equals to half minus 4. So 4u minus 4. So then so once we have this equation in place, all the children will be, is instinctive, right? Children will now work backwards to find the value of 1 unit. So once you find the value of 1 unit, you can therefore find what the answer is, right? What is that number? So 6u, 1u, 12, the number is actually 72. So as you can see, the working is not complicated at all. But to arrive at this answer requires students to know many skills, right? They need to learn those skills, and these are something that we provide for within our Mind Stretcher program, maths program. The next enriched component I would like to share with all of you is this particular component called uh, general ability. Now, why is general ability part of the current old GEP testing system? Because it encourages its children to think out of the box, and these are questions that are not taught in school. So they will need to somewhat use reasoning and whatever knowledge that they have in order to come up with an answer. So this is how a typical general ability question would look like. So if parents at home you're interested to find out the answer, maybe we'll just spend a minute on this question, and you have the answer 1 to 4. You may share with us in the chat. So so for general ability is a combination of logic uh, together with either language component or non-language components. Why do we use the term non-language? Because as you can see, patterns are not exactly, shapes and patterns are not exactly mathematics per se, right? So we just broadly classify them as non-language general ability components. So any answers for question for this question under general ability? Oh, Henry, thanks. I think yeah. I'll take. Okay. Do you have an answer for for this? So if you look at this question, no way you can solve it. No way you will make any sense in the conventional sense, right? How can one shape divide by another is equivalent to three of the same shape minusing off each other? So what children are required to do is to observe, to see for themselves an example of this relationship and try to work through in their mind, try to unlock the logic, right? So do you have an answer to this? Okay, the answer to this is actually three. So if you look at this, they are first of all, the first thing that students will think about, why are they different shapes? There must be something that has to do with shapes, right? And also what we could see, they are mathematical operators. So obviously some mathematics must be involved. So if you look at this, this is a pentagon which made of five sides. So five divided by a triangle which has three sides, you cannot divide. Then what is it then? The answer, right? So you're stuck. Then we think about it the other way. What if it's not a divide per se? So if you think about it, 5 times 3 will give me 15, right? And 5 minus minus, now the operators are reversed, right? So 5 times 3 will give me 15. So 15 divided by 3. So 5 times 3 is 15 is equivalent to 5 plus 5 plus 5. Okay? So first of all, the number of sides for that shape will represent the number to use, and the mathematical operator will be reversed. So the answer to this will be 4 minus 3 plus 5 minus 3. So the answer is 3. Are students able to find out the answer for themselves? Yes, if they have been exposed to this question. If not, at the onset, they would think, hey, teacher, why is this question illogical? There must be no answer for this question. Okay, so in our enriched high ability growth program, we will also have uh, periodically we'll be challenging children with this general ability type of questions. So the third enriched component is what we call the uh, investigative investigative learning component. So why do we have this component in mind? I think over time, if we just focus on purely academics, things we try to liven things up by incorporating some components of which children can work together, and they feel that it is something that is relevant in the real world. So, say for example, in this particular worksheet, we are in discussion here is the Land Transport Authority, the LTA, and it plans to plant some trees along the stretch of the MRT tracks. So, and the corridor is 645 meters long, and the trees are planted at 50 meters. What would be the best arrangement for them to spend the least amount of money? Okay, so here is a real life question, and children are encouraged to work through the solution either on their own or as a group and to discuss and present the answers. So why is this important? Because it sets whatever they learn in class now becomes something that is it becomes a reality because it's something that will happen in real life, right? So this is what we're trying to do, making theories in class come alive in real life context. So here, children are expected to work out, oh, how many trees could be planted every 50 meters if there are trees at both ends, and what would be the cost if there are no trees at both ends, right? And and we could even make the questions even more interesting. Say, for example, if you were to plant 3 trees, you get one for free. So here, in terms of what they learn in class, is under the MyStretcher power codes of intervals, right? And here, of course, if you look at the mainstream P3 syllabus, it is quite common also to see mathematical questions that involve these discounts. So here is an application of two concepts in the real life context. So this also form part of our enriched curriculum. So let me just quickly walk through the final worksheet which I have here, which is the main. I think I've shared the main component, but just let me quickly share with all of you again. Okay. So for the core curriculum, we have two components, right? Which is our weekly topical based concept paper, followed by a series of questions. So let me just quickly walk through with all of you because this is unlike the previous GP program because I understand some of you may have children who have attended our previous GEP program, and you may be concerned because we don't have there are many of these standard topics in P3 syllabus which we expect children to already be familiar with. So is it the same as the GEP? If not, will they lose out in learning topics which they are expected to know in school? So the answer to this question is no. Why? Because under this HAG program, we will be based on our mainstream HA program, which means that there will still be concept papers for children to go through, although it's compressed. Compressed means we are learning these concepts faster, and the questions are also more difficult. So if you were to look at the worksheets, we have some standard questions to help them familiarize with the concepts, and we also have the stretch questions, which are annotated with a star sign. Okay, so if you were to look at the worksheets, you have star signs in many of these questions in
Yeah.
the HAG
So,
program.
so, so I want to add on to what Andy has said. I think the more correct word is not more difficult. The correct word is more non-routine and more mind-stretching. This is the correct word, because whether it's difficult or not depends on whether you can see it. And if you're an ordinary student or even a general student, it's going to be difficult. So make no mistake, there is a level of difficulty. Why level of difficulty? Because it's non-routine. So I want to stress that, because it's non-routine. And all your creative high ability domains are all non-routine. Because if it is routine, then it won't be high ability. So I think everybody needs to understand. So whether it's difficult or not depends on whether you're exposed to it. If you're exposed to it, then it becomes easier. Okay, but if you're seeing for the very first time, make no mistake, it is going to be hard. Okay, that's why I said this is all high ability domains. The ability to see things, and you see, one of the most important things as you go higher level, I think what is the most important, like let's say you're taking some selection test for whatever things. Actually, what they don't give you the question itself. They give you this scenario. If this is the scenario, what happens in this scenario? So you see, it's a case of being able to apply. Whether it's chemistry, whether it's science, whether it's mathematics, also, it's always the case, because they want to see whether you're in a position to be able to process certain information and apply it and solve it. And this is not something which everybody has unless you're a really, really pure genius. That's why I always say it's not a case of, sometimes it's a case of just being exposed. You're saying for the first time, I guarantee it will be hard. Like what Andy said, hard. Correct. Totally hard. Even I look at it for the first time, it's tough for me, and I'm a good student. Okay, but this is the reality. Make no mistake, your GP second round, all these type of questions. Yeah, so that you all understand what is meant. But it's a case of being exposed to it. Okay, cool.
Okay, and just want to highlight one final part of it is that we will have periodic diagnostic tests to make sure that the children are prepared to sit for the test for the high ability growth school-based program. So if you look at these questions, right, typically there are two types, MCQ based and non-MCQ based. If you have the chance to look at this question in detail, you realize that these are far more difficult than what you would see in school. Why? Because we have so many years of teaching GEP students, we know exactly what it takes to identify these group of students, at least academically, based on some test-based procedures. So we have a series of MCQ questions plus a series of non-MCQ
Yeah.
questions.
But I think it's important to understand here, the GP is passed already. So the pool has broadened. Okay, which is the correct step direction. So the pool has broadened. So the GP second round is very difficult. It's off the table right now, but first round still remains. And for the first round to still remains, if you want to get in higher, please. So we must all understand this. The school does not know you. MOE does not know you. So because of that, there's only one domain which they can assess you. And that's your academic domain. This is the reality of things. So that is why we still need to be academically sound in that sense. Only when you're academically sound, then you can stretch yourself in other areas. And this is the function of the new high ability growth domain. Okay, so I hope everybody has that understanding. Growth is relative. Growth is ever. It's not like one fixed milestone. And all of us can grow in our own way. Even if you don't get it in right now, P3, it doesn't mean that you cannot be high ability growth. And even if you're not in a program here right now, it doesn't mean that you cannot excel in secondary school. So this is what we mean by having that, it may sound cliche, but having that the ability to you need to just have that belief in yourself. I think very, very important. Belief is everything. I'm not saying that we need to unrealistic belief, but we need to have, if we are intellectually curious, if we want to expand our more, then I think it's worth exploring. Okay, so it's now top 10%. So whether the reality is that next year onwards, all primary 3 students will undergo a HAG screening. I'm not too sure what they call it, exercise. Okay, yeah. So the reality is that these are all tests. They can call it any way at home because your GP selection, your GP screening test, they used to call it test, but right, they changed it to exercise, but it is still a test. Okay, the naming doesn't change anything, just like whatever we do. So I think it's important to bear in mind that everything is a journey, and the more exposed you are, the better it is for you, but you must belong, you must want to do it. If you're lazy, if your parents force you to do it, then it's not so ideal. Okay, fine. So fine. Okay, now we want to open you all for, can we have some questions? Any questions at all you want to ask? You see, I'm just showing you an example. There are many things which are done. You see, even when it comes to speaking, and we should realize, can I just share this? I just share this. Allow. Okay, I just share this. If you take a look at this, right? If you take a look at this, you see these are not speaking skills. It's not just speaking skills. It's something which we actually do. We usually do in master speakers all the time, which is why our students are they on champion national speakers. But you realize that, and you can see my screen, right? Who wants to be a millionaire?
Yes, can see.
Can see, you see, so this is my point. This is all, it's fun, and you know to know how to pitch. Right now, you are pitching your ideas to a group of people. So this is the creative element which are all involved. So you realize it's not something which you're going to do in school. Okay, but is this something which you can do in a high ability program? Absolutely, out of the school. Which is why there are wits and word debate, but wits and words debate is just a small segment of what we actually do. We do a lot more. That's why our students can do a lot of things: debate, witty introductions, sell something, entrepreneurship. So these are the domains which we are trying to expose. So you see, right? You realize it's a broad spectrum. This is not something which will be the domain of the normal ability students. So this is what I'm trying to tell you. So it's not just like we see comprehension. We do a lot of other things. And then again, this is also a component in our normal mind structure program, not just for high ability growth, because I think this is something which both types of students must know. Okay, cool. Yeah, so I'll stop sharing. So can we, so I hope you all have a better understanding now. Remember, this is not an exact science and the system will evolve. Okay, everything will evolve over time. Okay, but I think it's important to at least to know an idea of the various things. Okay, fine. So can we invite some parents to ask some questions? Any questions? Remember, no question is ever too silly. All of us have different perspectives, different thoughts. So by all means, go ahead. Yes. Any questions? Don't be afraid to ask questions. As I mentioned, if you're too shy, you can just ask in the Q&A. Then we will read out the question. Okay, because I think it's very important that we do not profess to know everything, but we are quite experienced. And this being a new program, new direction, but it's nothing new to us in that sense, because all the while we have got high ability, we've got high achiever classes, so it's nothing new. Okay, it's nothing new to us in that sense. So we have always been doing this. Okay, it's just that now it's a new program. We thought that we would expand the scope even at the primary school level. The GP syllabus was very, very narrow in that sense. It's just your MCQ for comprehension, vocab, and close. That's all. Nothing much of this. Obviously, they're very hard, but just reach the components. But your general mainstream syllabus and high ability growth, it covers a wide variety of things, which I think should be the correct direction.
So, Alvin, while waiting for questions to stream in, maybe you want to go through some of the frequently asked questions that parents may have.
Okay. I think. Yeah. Okay. Let's. Okay. We will share this document with you after we include some other stuff. And can you go further down? Okay, because there are some things which we have talked about done previously already, right? So let's go about it. Okay. Okay, can we go to question 4? I think this is a very important point which I need to mention to everybody. Okay, because for us, education, you cannot pre-select. Okay, so we cannot pre-select. We do not have a screening test. We do not have a selection test. Everything depends on your interest. So it's very important that if you pre-select, there are two ways of looking at it. Pre-select, it becomes self-fulfilling. But then again, you categorize students as being in that category, which is not correct, because over time they evolve. Okay, for better or for worse, it is both directions. So this is the reality. So our role here is never to select but to nurture. I think this is very important, not just in high ability growth, but in all aspects of what we try to do, whether it's in terms of speaking, whether it's in terms of mathematics, whether it's science, same. Okay, but the whole idea is that, but obviously high ability growth, we make it wider so that people are exposed to different domains. So whatever you see there, just now I gave you this link, right? Whatever you see there, the special enrichment programs, which are for the high ability growth of the last 20 years, we do it at my special. We do it at my special and we do it more. Yeah. So it's nothing new to us. This is the point I'm trying to, it's nothing new to us. It's just relabeling. And of course, because of this dynamic direction, we also recreated the materials to suit this overall direction. So core academic mastery is still important. Enriched thinking modules, very important. And applied literacy. Applied literacy just means how do you take this knowledge and adopt it and apply it to the real world. And this is very important at higher levels. Absolutely. It makes a lot of difference. Okay, trust me on this. It makes a lot of difference. Okay, when you go to secondary school. Okay, so everything, whatever we do is based on the shared trends. You must be able to reason. You must be able to analyze. You must be able to communicate, whether it's science, whether it's English or mathematics. And once you're able to do this, science becomes easier. Okay, cool. Okay, no questions. No questions. No questions is okay, no problem. As I mentioned, if you have any questions, please feel free to write to us. And going forward, we're going to have more of these talks. Okay, because I think it's very important to share so that people have a better understanding. Because anytime there's a new program, there is always an element of uncertainty, but it's fine. No problem. It's just it's just something which occurs because every now and then the curriculum changes as well, right? But we still need to adapt. But this is but I believe that this is definitely a step in the right direction. You broaden the pool rather than just a very narrow pool, which I always felt a little bit uncomfortable. And yeah, so I think this is definitely a step in the correct and brilliant direction. Okay, so don't worry, we'll be sending some of these materials to you and as well as give you some of these questions and snippets so that you understand what goes on. Then we take it along from there. Any question at all, please feel free to ask. Okay, Ken? So I guess since you don't have any questions, then I suppose we can end this session, but don't worry. And going forward now, do take note now, we are going to have a lot of William, can you tell them about the Telegram group?
No. We can share with the
Yeah,
parents.
so I think it's important if we also include it. I think it's important because we do a lot of things like, and these Telegram groups are not just for PSLE students, all levels, because the earlier you join, the earlier. So recently, for the last couple of months, we've been conducting a lot of free workshops, a lot of free oral speaking workshops, listening workshops, essay writing workshops, and they're all free for all my graduate students at all levels, because we always believe that it should not be exclusive to just primary 6. But if you're learning at primary 3, why not we expose it to you? At least you have an idea. So please do attend. So William, can you share all these links with them? Yeah. Okay, so it's important that you join these groups because we got a lot of these events. And when we held the PSLE oral, we got close to 1,000 people coming in, all the students, and some P5 as well. So I think it's good to be in the community. It's good to get to know all these things. Okay? Yeah, so please do subscribe to this, and this will happen at different subjects and at different levels as well. So so a lot of things are put inside there. So please do join the community for you to be updated. Okay?
Yes, yeah. So thanks, Alvin. So as mentioned, if you all click on the links, if you click on the links here provided by our colleague, you can actually see there in terms of all the useful tools that we have set out at MyStretcher. One of the ones that you see there is the Telegram channels, which are all our primary and secondary community. So as what Alvin has mentioned, these communities actually are open to all students, and parents as well, be it whether you are from MyStretcher or not from MyStretcher, and also across levels. So if you are in our primary Telegram group, you will see, so you can see the link over here, and then you can actually see a lot of resources shared across levels. So it's not just for our graduating levels like our primary six, but there are also materials for like, the primary five, primary four, and then even beyond that. For example, like these webinars that we do for high ability learning, we will also provide the materials there. So really what we do see is that, this whole primary education pathway building on is really a whole journey. And we are trying to see also how, beyond the 2-hour classes that we do at MyStretcher, how do we continue to support our students every step of the way, be it in terms of providing these free materials and resources, and also in terms of these expert seminars and workshops, which are complementary, and if it suits your profile, like for example you are a P1 and P2 parent trying to learn more about high ability learning, then you can actually also attend. And we actually have a lot of different kind of webinars and seminars as well. So
Not
you
just
can
this.
find them
Yeah.
on the Telegram page.
Why?
Yeah.
Why
so
do I need this?
you can see it from this link here. So once you click on this link, you can actually see all the workshops, Telegram communities that we have, and even other tools also, right? So if you look at this picture is all our MyStretcher events, right? Yeah. And the last thing is also, if you look at the link itself, you will wonder what is all these innovative learning tools. So these are some of the things that actually MyStretcher has developed in-house, right? In terms of, using tech, using AI-enabled learning, with regards to, how we can think about solving some of the challenges that students face. If you look at some of the examples here, these are examples for English, right? So I think some of the students face challenges for compo, right? So they may write a compo, but they are not able to get it marked, or they may have problems like speaking, right? And you all will know actually, like for example, English oral, actually for those of you who are at the lower primary level, you may see less of that, but you will realize that increasingly oral speaking is a very big part of the primary skills repertoire. In fact, if you see like at the primary six level, right, the oral mark has actually gone up in quite some weightage and percentage. So what we have done here is also to curate these tools which students can actually use as a way to, understand and see what are the good practices in reading, and then they can even try it themselves. They can even do a read aloud, and then they can get their marks and they can get their self scored on that too. So these are some of the tools that you can also see. In fact, if you look at this whole page, it's a whole different repertoire of resources that we eventually want to let students and parents self-help, and also to see what is useful for you on this journey too. Okay?
Yes. So actually, can you hear me? So practically, a lot of these things are useful for all students at all levels. So when William said that oral is increasingly important at primary secondary school, do you know why it became increasingly important? I tell you the reason why. Because many secondary school students cannot speak. This is the problem. I know. I teach many students. You may go to RI with a good score. You may go to RGS with a good score. You may go to Huashan with a good score. I can absolutely assure you 95% of them cannot speak. When I say cannot speak, means cannot speak confidently. They cannot do like what we're doing right now. They cannot even say for 10 seconds. I know because I teach them in my classes. Okay, and this is a problem. Why? Because the IP system that plays up all the speaking. And right now they realize it is a problem. So what happens is that some of these schools are increasingly putting them back in, but it still will not make you a good speaker. Why? Because you do it twice a year. Just take a mark, just an oral exam. So it's not going to help you. And that's the reason why we have all our showcases as well. And yeah, you should come and take a look when we do the all these showcases because they're all free. So even when you are a young parent, it's good to know the DSA process to get at least to get a sense. So it is not just your 2-hour curriculum. We do a lot of things complimentary for all parents and all students. So please to join us, okay? Because they are at your fingertips. So yeah, you should join. It is not like because we only do things if they are useful. If they're not useful for us, we won't be doing them. So yeah, so do join these committees and do take part in this because they are complimentary. Okay, cool. Can. Okay, so I guess that's about it. So I guess Waylon and Andy, you can end the session.
Yeah. So
And thank our
thanks,
parents,
thanks
yeah.
very much, Alvin, and thanks everybody for joining in tonight also. So hope that you found something helpful here with regards to the high ability learning. And also just to keep note that we will actually have a series of different webinars, seminars, different resources throughout the years as well. And do join the groups and take a look out for these events. So have a good week ahead, and we'll see you sometime soon. Yeah, thanks everybody. Have a good evening. Thank you.